Hello, welcome to Scrap Time. My name's Christine, and this video is part of the Inky background series, and we're going to be using the Derwent Inktense Pencils. So I have the 72 set of pencils, so it's quite large. And these are a watercolor pencil. Now there's many watercolor pencils on the market, but I like to use these because of the intensity of their color. So this is the sample I made. I used the pencils to do a background, I used the pencils to do the splatters, and then doodle and add a bit more color in. And I'm going to show you a variation of how I did this. So I'm using a watercolor paper. Whenever I'm using water-based stuff and I'm adding water to it, you want to use a watercolor paper for this technique. And whereas in the other one I did the whole thing, I'm not going to be coloring the whole thing this time. I'm just going to be putting a bit of color, and that's what's great about these pencils is you have that control. You're choosing where you want exactly this color to go. So I'm using some blues. And you can decide how much. So this is a darker blue, so I'm only going to do a little bit of it. But I'm going to come in with maybe this lighter blue and add it underneath. And then I can even come in with a little green here and put in here. And you can blend the color so that green can turn into that. Maybe a bit of green down here. And the thing too is I can wet it and paint it, and then I can add more color to it. So if we leave it like that, I have a paintbrush. I'm just dipping it in water. And then you can see as soon as you touch a bit of water, the intensity of the colors, and that's why, hence they're called Inktense, and why these are my favorite watercolor pencils. Now, I haven't used these in a while, and just playing with them, I realized you can do more than you think with it. A lot of people just use them for coloring in like stamped images, or people actually use them for drawing and all that. But in the craft world, they're used more for coloring in that, and you can do so many fun techniques with them. So I'm sort of just doing this because I think I'm going to build something in here later. But I quickly just dry it. I'm just drying off the water. And I just want to go in with some more color just to show you how you can layer in your color. I'm just trying to decide which color to go with. This one is sort of, I think it's a bright blue, it says. So I can easily just color right over that and this way and add more color. If you had used a lot of water, you could water it down. And so if you find that your color, I'm going to add a bit more green down here. If your color isn't as dark as you'd like it, then you can just go back and add more. So I don't want a lot on my brush. I wiped off some of the excess water on my brush because I just want to touch it a bit. And that pigment in there just gorgeous like that. So I'm going to just dry it a little again. And now I want to add some splatters. I just have a drop of water. And so I'm going to go with, say, a darker blue that's in there. But you'll notice that if you try to do it on your craft sheet, nothing happens. The ink doesn't write on this. It's like a non-stick surface, and the pencil doesn't go on it. So what I do for splatters is I get a piece of paper, and I put a lot of ink down, or I like my pencil, pigment, squirt it. Then I take my brush, pick up that ink, because it's very watery, and now I'm going to splatter down. And I'd like to give it a little bit of, dry it a little between each splatter. It doesn't have to be completely dry. It's just this way when you splatter the next color, it doesn't necessarily blend into it. I'm using greens and blues, so it's fine. You won't have the mixing of the color. But if you were to do a lot of colors, you don't want your colors mixing. And you can see I got a lot of splatters from just that little puddle of pigment. I'm going to put that aside. You could also let this dry, and then you can re-wet it probably and do it. So I'm going to dry this before we get into a bit of doodles. Now, if you had spots that were really watery, you can always just go in and pick it up and it will form that little water spot, which I like the look of that too. Okay, so now we can do some doodling. And so I'm going to just do some big doodles here, just like a big scallop. Now you can see this color is really dark. It's called navy blue, hence it's really dark. But if you go in with a brush with a bit of a finer tip, or even you can even use a smaller brush than this one. Now this brush had a bit of red on it. You don't want it very wet, but you can just go over this, and then you can make it not so harsh. The line is still there, but you've been able to add just a bit of color and that to your doodles. And I can go in with some green even and add some lines. So that's the other great thing, the pencils, you can sharpen them and you have that sharp point, which is great for doodling. And again, I can get a little water. I don't want a lot of water. And just going to hit that with a little water or a dry heat. And then I'm going to grab my white pencil. And so here I use the green, and there's the green there, and I want to separate it a bit, so I can go in with my white and just sort of do a little highlight down here. And that will just sort of separate the two. I can even add a bit of white in here, and I wouldn't use water on it. I would just sort of let it be. And so in this sample here, I used white all in there. You can see like little highlights, and that's just this white pencil crayon over top of the paint. And then if I want to, I can even go back in with a pencil just to do a few sort of scribbly marks that I won't water down. Like that. And now I've sort of made an area where I'll be able to collage or put something else in onto it later. But this shows you like two ways, or two different colors in that. So you can do it for background, you can splatter, you can doodle, then you can just sort of like touch a bit of water to make your doodles more painterly. And there's a lot you can do with these pencil crayons, and they were the Derwent Inktense pencils that I used for these samples. Thanks for watching. Be sure to give our video a thumbs up and subscribe to Scrap Time videos on YouTube. And for more Inky backgrounds, be sure to check out the Inky background playlist.